been able to connect with one another. And I'm just glad that you're part of the Sync Connect mentorship program. And I'm excited that we're offering this exclusive webinar to you. So it's called Dismantling Limiting Beliefs, Knowledge Gaps, and Imposter Syndrome. So we will have this recorded and you'll be able to access it later. And for those folks who couldn't join us now, they have access to it as part of the Sync Connect program. So this is being recorded. You can also, think you can turn on closed captioning. I was looking for it.
Yeah.
You can
On
turn
the
on closed
lower
captioning.
part of your screen, closed captioning, I just turned it on, so hopefully you can see it if you'd like.
Yes, I see it now. And I also updated my Zoom, so I'm trying to remember where everything is. So closed captioning on the lower portion of your screen, if you need it. We will be having a presentation by our lovely panelists today, and I'll introduce them in a minute. With Julie Hennrikus, Liz Mugavero, and they will be having a nice slideshow presentation and a Q&A period. Also, as a bonus, we'll probably have a short period of time at the end where you can ask us anything about writing. So just letting you know that in advance. If you have questions, if you could put it in the Q&A box on the bottom part of your screen, that would be great. It's a little hard sometimes to keep track of the chat. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A area. Julie has shared a document, a workbook that they're doing with this presentation. We'll also have it posted up later with the webinar, but it's the Dismantling Limiting Beliefs workbook. And it should be a PDF that you can click to download. So let me go ahead and introduce our wonderful guest today. And I'm excited because I think I will be jotting a lot of notes to figure out what I need to learn or remember. So we have, of course, Julie Hennrikus, our lovely, esteemed Executive Director of Sisters in Crime. She is also, if you don't know, multi-talented. So she's involved in the theater community. She does arts management courses. She teaches them. She's a creativity coach. She is also an author, multi-talented with multiple names. So you can find her as Julia Henry, J.A. Hennrikus, and Julianne Holmes. And here's a little plug. You can go to her author website. It's jhauthors.com. So thank you, Julie. And then we have Liz Mugavero. She also writes as Kate Conti. So Kate Conti writes the Cat Cafe Mysteries and the Full Moon Mysteries. As Liz Mugavero, she writes the Positively Organic Mysteries, the first of which was an Agatha Award nominee for Best First Novel. She lives in the Boston area with her rescue pals. So thank you both for being here, and I'll have you take it away.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. I would like to do a shout out and make sure that it is saved for in this recording to Jennifer J. Chow for her really forward thinking and for being the force behind the entire Sync Connect program. We've got a wonderful group of volunteers who have been helping her do it, but she has been in constant contact with folks dealing with questions and everything else. And so she was an amazing president of Sisters in Crime. She is an amazing past president, and we're so lucky to have her in our community. So Jen, thank you so much for doing this. And I am, as she said, I'm Julie Hennrikus. Some of you know me, and I'm so delighted that Liz Mugavero is here to do this with me. Liz and I have been friends for a long time. We are also accountability partners for each other in writing. And we were having a conversation just a few weeks ago, which is when I said, you've got to do this with me, about imposter syndrome. And needing to talk each other through just overwhelmed or feeling stuck, or, we're both branching out on what we're writing and how we're writing, and I've been suffering with moments of, I don't think I can do this. And so I lay that out there at the beginning just to say to everybody, I've published 10 books. Liz, how many are you on now?
I'm writing number 19.
So 19 books. And we both have moments where we're like, what are we doing? Or I don't really know, or, I'm a fraud. And so this is a natural thing, but we need to work on how to create internal validation for ourselves, because you've got to believe it in your core. You can't have somebody tell you you're not an imposter or you could do this. So this, let me start the slideshow, and then she and I are going to talk about different elements of dismantling limiting beliefs, knowledge gaps, and imposter syndrome. And we're going to tell you exactly what that means as we're working on this. So, and we haven't we've gone through this, but we're gonna take sections when we're talking about this. So we're starting with imposter syndrome, and I put this as an inverted triangle because this is the big one. Like, this is a huge issue that you need to address, and you need to understand what imposter syndrome is and what it does. And it's not just in writing. Imposter syndrome, really affects people in all walks of life. Some of it is indoctrinated. Some of it is a learned behavior just by society. But it can be a real hindrance towards taking chances and to moving forward. Being a writer requires bravery on some front, and sharing your writing, like being a published author, is another step in that brave journey, because you are doing something that you're relying on your own creativity. And when you're putting it out there, whether it's to a critique partner or to an agent or to an editor, you are really putting yourself on the line and risking something. So we're going to start with imposter syndrome. Then we're going to talk about limiting beliefs and what those are and where they come from, and then knowledge gaps. And knowledge gaps is actually, after the rest of this, it's easier, but knowledge gaps are really important to recognize and to understand. You can fill those knowledge gaps, but don't assume that you know, or don't assume that, you're never going to figure this out. You can actually take steps to fill your knowledge gaps. So how do you get over imposter syndrome? Liz, I am going to move to you to talk a little bit more about this and where it comes from.
Yeah, for sure. So imposter syndrome, I like to think of it as that little voice that's always there in the back of your head that's saying, like, who do you think you are? And, why do you think you can write a book again? And this happened to me even the last book I was writing. I mean, it was book number 18. I was at the very end of it. I'm like, this book is terrible. No one's going to read it. And then I realized that I had something a little bit wrong in it, and then went back and fixed it. And then I felt better about it. But I still was like, my series is going to get canceled. It's not, it's a really unhelpful state of being. And really underneath it all is fear, right? And it can manifest in so many different ways. So it can show up as, again, self-doubt, constantly questioning your abilities, perfectionism. So feeling like you can't put anything out there until it's absolutely perfect, which, by the way, doesn't actually exist, because nothing is ever perfect. It can be, that underlying fear of failure, but also it can be a fear of success. And it can also show up as comparisons, right? So comparing yourself to other writers and how quote, far ahead or farther ahead than that you might think someone else is. And when you're trying to figure out where that came from, it's important to really go back in, because it's one thing to recognize that you're having an unhelpful thought, but I've found personally that it's hard to get past that until you know where it actually came from, and that you can dismantle it by kind of going back and deconstructing it.
So this point is very, may sound a little woo-woo or a little touchy-feely, but as writers, that's part of what we do is we we go back, we recognize traumas, we use our own traumas to inform our writing in whatever way. But imposter syndrome frequently comes, as do limiting beliefs, which we're going to talk about next. But imposter syndrome comes about because you've been telling yourself a story, and that story is not true. But you've told yourself that story so often that you've come to believe it. And that is part of what this work is about, is what are you telling yourself that's holding you back? Why are you telling yourself you can't write a book? Again, imposter syndrome is fear-based. Fear manifests itself in a lot of different ways, and it's protective. When you're afraid, it's your lizard brain protecting you. It's there for a reason. It's not a terrible thing. But as a creative person, you have to get past that fear to actually do the work. So this is, we can, in the workbook, we suggest that you spend a couple of minutes talking about this story you've been telling yourself. I can't do, and you can use this workbook for your whole life. I mean, this can be as far as being athletic or knitting or huge, getting a degree of some sort or learning a new skill. I mean, it's all the same work. So what story have you been telling yourself? And what is that doing? So just, if you want to take notes and jot that down for a second, like what story have I been telling myself and how did it get there? So we'll talk about this a little bit more, but sometimes these stories come from parents or grandparents or siblings or somebody you loved and trusted who didn't want to see you hurt, or who sort of clipped your wings a little bit at some point, and them telling you you couldn't do X, Y, or Z became a belief that you have. So that's part of it. So naming that story. So now the thing is with those stories, as I've been indicating, those lead to limiting beliefs. So a limiting belief is something that without evidence, you believe is true. Without evidence. I can't sing. All right, so this is one of my limiting beliefs. I'll tell you where it came from. I have the best parents and the best mother in the world, but when I was like in 4th grade, she told me I couldn't carry a tune. To this day, and I'm a lot older than that, I hesitate before singing in public. Now, I have friends who are singers and who do things and go through vocal, and anyone can sing. And, this is one of my limiting beliefs that still haunts me. So I know it and I can name it. Doesn't mean it's over, right? So the step one with limiting beliefs is understanding them. Where did they come from and how did they get passed down to you? Remember that sometimes people will say something like, that was probably an aside by my mother, but I carried it with me forever, which is why we have to be careful about what we say around kids. But, some of them are people don't want to see you hurt, or they want to see you take care of yourself. And so that they're going to pass on a limiting belief that way. Any thoughts from you, Liz, on that first step of where it came from and how it got passed down?
Yeah, I mean, I have a million examples. And usually if you're any kind of a creative person, the stories that you're hearing about is about your art, right? So one of my biggest blocks is believing that, my writing can be something more than a hobby. So I remember, like, I was always really sure that I was going to be a writer, and I was determined. And when I told my parents what I was going to college for, their response was, "Oh, that's nice, but what's your backup plan? I think you should be a teacher," which, nothing against teachers, but being a classroom teacher was just not what I was called to do. And I took that in, and I still went ahead with my plan, but it got planted in the back of my mind. And so to this day, I struggle with feeling like I can ever make my living from creative work, which, you know, is just a story that my parents, out of worry for me, because they didn't want me to be, you know, that caricature of the struggling artist on the street with the bottle of alcohol. And they didn't mean anything by it, but it stayed in my head, and it's eaten away at me. So it's a story that I had to really look at and ask myself, you know, is this true? Or is this just something that I've believed for, you know, 40 years, right? And have to let go of.
And Liz, I think that that's such a great example of a limiting belief that you can say I'm done, but it creeps up, right? When something happens.
Every day, every day. And that's why this is never over, right? Like learning about yourself and doing the work to get past the things that are holding you back. Like it's peeling an onion basically, because you can solve a problem and then you can find a bigger problem underneath it, or the next problem, or, you know, whatever else it is that you need to address to get to your highest potential. It never stops happening, the work.
So in the workbook, we have a few exercises on this, like to list 3 of the limiting beliefs in your life. Spend some time thinking about this. And certainly within Sync Connect, mentors and mentees, you know, being a mentor is the greatest gift in the world because you learn so much as you're having these conversations. We all have these issues. So, you know, you can just focus on writing, or you can use these exercises for the rest of your life. Where did those beliefs come from? Sometimes they are from external forces. Sometimes it's from you protecting yourself from rejection or something else. And journal about the worst things you believe about yourself, the ones that are holding you back the most. What are the worst things that you believe about yourself that are getting in your way, right? Spend some time thinking about those and sort of diving deep. And then find the one that you feel most, you know, strongly about, and flip the script entirely. Just flip the script, like make it different. So I can't write a book becomes I'm a novelist, right? And so that's the second step, is flipping the script and figuring out what you're going to, you know, what you're going to be doing. But within that second step, when you flip the script, you have to break it down. It's not one day you don't wake up, you know, and say, I'm not athletic. And then the next day say, I'm a marathoner. I don't know who else is watching the Olympics, but I'm spending, you know, a couple hours every day saying, how do they do that? Right? So you don't go from, I can't do anything to, I'm going to be an Olympian. You need to break it down. And you need to keep repeating the next step towards where you want to go till you start believing it. You need to have what people have called a knowing. You need to, your heart, your mind, and your gut all need to agree that this is possible, that you are there. So an example of flipping the script and breaking down the steps are from I can't write to I am a novelist. Steps in between are things like I believe I'm creative. Liz is a creativity coach and a book coach. And this is something that, you know, allowing yourself to be creative. The fact that you're here means that you've likely hit that step. But sometimes it's important to remember, I am creative, no matter what's going, I am creative. I write every day, or I write 3 times a week, or whatever. I have a writing practice would be another way of phrasing this. I understand that my first draft is going to be terrible, and that's part of the process. Boy, is that a big part of this limiting beliefs work. Everyone's first draft is terrible. Underline that. Everyone's first draft is terrible, but you can fix it. That's the joy, and you become better at fixing it. But everyone's first draft is terrible. There might be some people on this call who that's not true, and bless you, because I'm not one of you. And then you would move to I'm a novelist. So moving through each of those steps, just working on each of those steps and believing it is part of the process of flipping these these stories within yourself so that you do believe them. And then you move into the next step, which is creating an affirmation that supports your new beliefs. Liz, can you talk to folks about affirmations?
Yeah, affirmations are my favorite way to get out of my own head. I like to think of them as unsubscribing from the limiting beliefs, right? So just like you would hit an unsubscribe button on an email you don't want to receive anymore, I like to think of it as when I flip my script and I start talking about the way I want things to be versus the way I'm afraid things are, it's unsubscribing from that belief. So their affirmations are really very simply, they're positive statements that help us cultivate new beliefs in ourselves and the world we're living in and how we're acting and interacting with our world. And using them consistently, and like Julie said, if you're doing them in steps, it's much easier to get to that place where you're believing them. But if you use them consistently and if you can feel that they're actually true or can actually be true, then they're going to help rewire your thought patterns. They're going to help you create new experiences, and they're going to just make you feel good. And that's going to put you into a whole different mindset.
And one nice thing about affirmations to remember, when I gave the example of the Olympian, I'm a couch potato to I am an Olympian. That's actually, you could flip that switch, but I'm never going to become an Olympian. But an affirmation would be, I am healthy and strong. Right? That's an affirmation. That's telling myself you're healthy and you're strong.
Yep.
That helps you flip a script. That rewires your brain. And affirmations truly do rewire your brain. This kind of not telling yourself what you can't do, but focusing on what you can do, flipping that script, using affirmations is a gift to yourself and your brain, even when it's hard. Just like I can write this book. You might say it through gritted teeth and with a glass of wine in your hand, but you can write this book. Liz, I think that you're going to share with the group some affirmations that you do with some of your clients. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I will pop that in the chat.
Awesome. Awesome. So limiting beliefs, really powerful exercise that helps with imposter syndrome, but also really can change your life. Honestly, it can change your life to recognize what's holding you back. And again, this is all internal work. No one else can do this for you. A coach or a therapist can work with you to help you get there, but you have to do the work in order to create these changes. So I am just, if the only thing you get out of today is flipping a script on negativity of yourself and coming up with a couple of affirmations that are going to get you through the next 3 months of the Sync Connect program and get you through the next phase of whatever you're working on. If that's where you are, then we're doing our jobs here.
And one of my favorite, can I just pop in and just say, if nothing else, one of my favorite affirmations is for the days when it's hard and you're like, oh, why am I doing this? I just like to say, I love to write, because that's where I started when I was a kid. And that's something that, still feels true to me today, even when it's hard.
Yes. And, we talk about this. Liz and I have interesting conversations, but joy does not always mean you're happy. But writing is, you have to love it. Otherwise, why are you doing this to yourself? And you got to find some joy in the process. People will frequently say, I hate writing. I love having written. I think this Dorothy Parker quote. I support folks who feel like that, but I'm also, it's such hard work to write. Why would you not try to find the things that give you joy? My challenge is always starting to write, but once I start, I remember why I love it, right? Right? So I love to write is a good post-it around your house. Start being that person who writes these things down, has a post-it on your bathroom mirror, has it in your journal every day when you wake up, send yourself a text to tell you that. Maybe have some affirmations with your accountability partners and send them to each other. Just doing, you love to write. Liz, you love to write. I'll do that as she's hitting this deadline on the next Cat Cafe book.
Okay.
Remember, you love to write, Liz.
Love it.
So affirmations are incredibly powerful. Now, the next part I'm going to talk about is knowledge gap, or we're both going to talk about. As Jen mentioned, I teach arts management classes still. I've spent my entire career in arts management, but a lot of it in the performing arts. And I still teach theater students arts management because you need to know the business side in order to do things. And I try and fill knowledge gaps for them in things that they don't understand, like how the business works. But what we all do, and as you get older, I find that I'm much more willing to say, I don't know what you're talking about, or help me figure that out. When I was younger, I pretended I knew everything, and I'll figure it out on my own. The trick is you don't have to figure things out on your own, but you have to figure out what you know and what you don't know and how to fill those gaps. So so knowledge gaps are like, I don't, I want to get an agent. A knowledge gap can be like, how do I do that? And people will say you query, but there's so many steps to that process that you need to break things down into steps. So make a list. And again, this is in the workbook. We gave you space for 10. You could do 20. You could do 30. The stuff you don't know, where you're just not 100% sure of how to do. And never preface a question with, this sound may be stupid, but I'm going to ask this question, because I will guarantee you every question you ask, somebody else has that question. They're just not brave enough to ask. So this is, when we get to the question and answer period, we're going to talk about that. But what don't you know? What aren't you sure with? In this program, boy, is this a good time to work on some of this stuff. What don't I know? Because the mentors here, we all have opinions. We all have different ways of going about this, but this is an opportunity to have some of these conversations. So what don't you know can be a bunch, as I say, querying can be one, or, how to create an author platform, whatever it is. So look at this list and just brainstorm it. Don't edit yourself. Don't do anything, but just brainstorm a huge list. And then look at it and pick some categories that you're talking about on a regular basis. So for writing, it's likely going to be craft, business, maybe querying, maybe marketing, things like that. Like there's specific things. And each of those categories can be broken down as well. But look at some big bucket categories and then go back through your list and categorize it. Maybe put it in order or whatever. And then you want to brainstorm how to fill those knowledge gaps. Right? So you're going to make a list. You're just going to, and this is for you, everything you don't know. And you can be really specific, like, I don't know how to write a log line, here's a knowledge gap I have. I don't even know what that means. So I have two knowledge gaps. What is it? And how do I do it? Right? So keep writing things down. Liz, can you talk about the 10%?
Yes, absolutely. So in business classes, they call it the 10% edge. And it's really the idea that you don't need to know everything before you start something new, before you launch a program, before you coach somebody. You just need to be 10% ahead of, whoever you're trying to teach or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so really the idea is you don't need to know everything before you get started. You just need to know a little bit. So you don't need to be an expert to start writing. You already know how to tell a good story. You know what a good story is like. You read a lot. You know that you love to write. So you're here, you're in Sisters in Crime. You've got a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips. So you probably actually know more than you think you know. But you don't need to have all the answers or be a master of craft or know every technique or even know how to create, for example, a great twist. It's all going to come with practice. And writing is really that process of discovery. So I don't know who says it. I can't remember, but there's someone who says, the only way to learn how to write a book is to write a book. And so you can take all the classes, you can learn all the things, but you have to actually put it into practice. And so as you start writing and growing and discovering how you write and your voice and how you tell your story, then your knowledge is going to grow. You're going to feel more confident. And then you're going to just hone your voice. You're going to be able to put your own perspective into your stories. And all you need to know is 10% more than when you started even putting your pen to the page. That's it.
And I think one of the wonderful things about being in a creative journey is that you're never done.
No.
You know, other journeys, like if you're going to become a lawyer, there's a ladder. You can see the ladder, and every step, like to partner and passing the bar and all these are steps on that ladder, and that ladder is going in one direction. Now you can get off the ladder at different times or be, you know, hit a ceiling in your own career. But being a writer or doing any creative project means that you're getting on a roller coaster, and you got to buckle up, because it may be going swimmingly and other times it may go backwards. You're going to be upside down. You're going to feel like throwing up. Like, that's the journey. And we also don't make it easy on ourselves, because that next book is going to be better. Like, oh, I'm good at this, so let me make my life more difficult and add a second point of view, or add a second timeline, or write a historical, or write a suspense when I've been writing cozies, or write a true crime when I've been writing fiction, or whatever you do. It's natural for us to make it harder on ourselves, which brings up this whole means you got to go back and do the work about imposter syndrome and stuff all over again.
Yeah. I'm actually dealing with that now as I'm, branching out from writing cozies to writing a different kind of book. And I'm feeling that, like, wow, do I know enough to write this book? Right. So of course I'm going back to my limiting beliefs. But also, when I really stop and think about it, yeah, I know how to write a heck of a lot better than I did when I started 12 years ago. And so that's enough for me to know that I can figure out. It might take me a little bit longer. It might have a lot of false starts and stops, but I will be able to figure out how to write a different kind of book.
So when you're working on your knowledge gaps, if you look at, what your categories are, and then you just create a list under those categories, and then you can figure out who to talk to or what classes to take. Again, Sisters in Crime, the webinars, archives, chances are you can learn a lot. And if there's a gap in the archives, reach out to us and say, it'd be great to have a class on blah, 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 blah. And, we'll work on that, because having new webinars to help with knowledge gaps is a wonderful thing. But it can also be a conversation with somebody. It can be an informational interview. So if you're going to a conference or doing something else, an informational interview isn't asking for anything in particular, but it's just saying, can I buy you a cup of coffee, and can you tell me about, how you found an agent? You're not saying, introduce me to your agent. You're not saying, would you read my query? You're saying, can you tell me how you did this, so that I can fill a knowledge gap and hear what people did? There's no one way to do any of this, but talking to a few people about their journey can help you. I will also do a pitch for the podcast, which I do, because I try to talk to people about that and their publishing journeys. And everyone's got a different one, but you might be able to glean some information from each one. So at this point, we are going to stop sharing. We are going to come back and see if there are any questions, or if there are any. Look at Jen Chow. She is like putting all the stuff and doing putting the links in. We will share our documents with you as well. But does anyone have a question about any? We went through it pretty quickly, but this is work. I mean, you're going to hear it, but this is later on today. You're going to look at the workbook, or you're going to start that list of, limiting beliefs, or maybe knowledge gaps, or whatever. This may be a great way to have a conversation. I also want to shout out, so many of the mentors in this program inspire me, and the mentees, but they inspire me because they're flipping the switch, and they're trying something new, or, I'm looking at friends who are writing in a new genre. You know, they're going from mystery to fantasy, or they're writing YA, and they've been writing adult, or you know, Liz and I are both working on, for me, it's suspense. I don't know that I'll ever be a thriller writer, but you know, how do I write a suspense novel? What does that look like? But there's so many people in our community who are doing that and have such interesting careers. So be inspired by them. Again, a really important thing I think to think about is to not be jealous of anyone, like to support, to cheer, and to never ever say, oh, you know, why not me, or I write better than they do, or anything, because that's just, that energy brings in that same energy. And again, this may not sound like something you all want to hear, but energy, this is all about mindset and energy. And this is a hard thing that you're all doing, that we're all doing. So how can you really make sure that you're supporting yourself in the best way possible?
I like what you just said, Julie. And I always remember a conversation I heard many, many years ago at a VoucherCon between Michael Connolly and Harlan Coben, and they were talking about support in the mystery community. And one of them said, you know, the best thing about this community is that everyone realizes that no one else has to fail for anyone to succeed.
Right. Nobody has to fail for someone else to succeed. Let's all write that on a post-it for later on, right? Any questions from anyone about this? Was this helpful? Let us know. Did this do what you wanted it to do? This is challenging.
I see hearts. Hearts are
I
good.
see hearts. Hearts are good.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you all wanted to hear about?
Could you repeat that about success again?
Yeah, no one has to fail so anyone else can succeed.
That's right. There's enough for everybody.
Yeah. Janet says, super helpful. When I joined the program, I didn't think I had limiting beliefs, but I absolutely do. We all do. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. We all, yeah. And as Liz and I keep saying, it's not like, you know, at the end of, you're going to spend tonight and all day tomorrow, you can work on the workbook and and I'm done. I'm fixed. No, but you're going to have tools in order to get yourself reoriented and to feel better, because it's hard, and when you're writing, you're doing it by yourself. So again, find accountability partners. That's super helpful. The right accountability partners, but don't, you know, this is on you to do, and so give yourself some grace too, because it is hard. Yeah. Anyone else? And Liz, did you share the affirmations?
I did.
Awesome. And I think we shared the workbook, but I'm going to share it just one more time.
Yeah, I can pop mine in the chat again too.
All right. Jennifer J. Chow, would you like to come back on? Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel like you got a pep talk, but yes, you know, I tell people all the time, showing up is 90% of everything. And you showing up here and showing up in the program is huge. And congratulations for doing that, because that's really hard to do. And most of us are on the introverted side of the scale. I know that it's hard to believe if you see me in public that that's true, but yeah, so we need to take care of ourselves.
We do have one question in the Q&A box I noticed just now. It says, What makes someone an accountability partner? That's from Mary.
So this is a great question. You know what, Mary? This is an important conversation to have. Because, and Liz, well, why don't you start, Liz, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, we've been having so many conversations about this exact thing because there's so many different things that people think about when they hear accountability partner. It's, there's the version where you have someone where you can say like, hey, I wrote my 500 words today, or, check in once a week and have to report on something that you said you were going to do. That's one way to do it. Julie and I and another writer have actually formed a accountability threesome where not only are we that for each other, where we set our goals, we check in every week and we make sure that we've gotten to the goals, but we're also trying to help each other with our writing, help each other level up, be honest with each other about, feedback and what we're seeing and make suggestions, really just be partners in the writing process to help each other reach the highest potential that we know that we can all reach. And I think, I've done both things. I've had the check-ins with, multiple people over the years. And I think this latest iteration is really so helpful. And, something that we got an idea from another writer who we heard speak and who credits a lot of her success to this exact model. And so, of course, we had to try it. And it's just, I can't even say enough about it. I don't know how you feel about it, Julie, but I'm just so thankful that we're able to do that for each other.
I agree with you, Liz. I mean, Liz and I went to a book launch 3 or 4 months ago and just looked at each other afterwards and said, oh, this sounds like an interesting opportunity to give some tough love when you need it. To help with knowledge gaps, like when we're not sure, does this beginning work? Is this book a suspense, or how would you do it? We're kind because we like each other, but also like, yeah, that's not working, Julie, or maybe you need to do that. So that you don't want somebody to rewrite your work for you, but you want somebody to help push you to stretch. So again, there's so many ways. I've been in a couple of book groups, critique groups, and it hasn't worked for me all the time. So it's finding people who are going to boost you, who are going to show up at the same level you're showing up at. And also who can, maybe at the same place you are, maybe a little bit further ahead as far as their craft goes, so that you can really learn from each other and push each other. So it's been, we'll see. I mean, I'm hopeful, and I know that it's certainly been helping me these last couple of months. So yeah.
And of course, there are the days where we need those text threads of like, hey, you can do it when somebody's on a big deadline. So
Right. Or when somebody sends in the, last draft to their agent, and just like, we're the people who get the text saying I sent it in, and we've been hearing about the whole process, and it's like, yay, fingers crossed, let's go. Because that's exciting. So yeah. Again, this is all a roller coaster ride too. That's a whole different webinar, but it's not all sunshine and flowers, right? Can't series get canceled, and you change agents, and you figure stuff out, and the three of us could certainly have a lot of those conversations. But you got to keep moving. I mean, it's you're a shark. If you stop moving, you're going to die. So let's keep going. Any other?
that's for a pep talk.
I know. Be a shark. The nice thing about being a writer is the work itself is you can do by yourself, so nobody has to see it. I work with a lot of actors. I was never an actor. I was always on the admin side. But for actors to use their craft, they need an audience. They could take classes and hone it that way. But in order to practice your craft, you need an audience. We don't need an audience. We can do this for ourselves. We can write terrible short stories just to try it out. I keep trying to write horror stories, and then I realize I'm never going to be a horror writer because so it always ends up, I write too long. I start a new book and it always ends up more traditional than scary, but that's me. but we can do it. And how lucky are we? It's like painters, visual artists can do the same thing, but in the performing arts, you really, and I'm sure there are people here who are performing artists or have them in their lives. You need an audience, and that is really hard. And so I am blessed that this is how I express myself creatively. Yeah. Do you want any other questions about writing? Careers, sisters in crime, mantras. I'm seeing everything. All right. Well, before we wind down, I'm going to ask my fellow panelists what's coming up for you. Liz, what is coming up for you, or what's coming up for Kate Conte? Conte, for those who don't know her. Yeah.
Yeah, so the 8th book in the Cat Cafe series is coming out August 20th, and it's called Shock and Paw. So it's a little dose of Christmas in August. It's set in the holiday season on Daybreak Island, and we've got a Christmas light contest. We've got someone who was electrocuted by her Christmas lights, and all kinds of mayhem going on. So it's not going to be a very quiet holiday season. So looking forward to that coming out.
All right, and Jen, what's new with you?
Okay, so I have 2 plugs I have to do if I can reach this. Okay, so you may have seen this around, nonfiction book, Writing the Cozy Mystery, authors' perspectives on their craft. So this is currently out, at least as an ebook. You may recognize some names in here. We'll find Julie's. So J.A. Hennrikus does one on fair play and cozies. And then mine is Cultural Elements Elevate a Cozy Mystery. So this is out now. So this is my first nonfiction. So it's been fun just writing an essay that potentially is helpful to others, and also that we can lift up the cozy genre mystery genre, because I feel like sometimes cozies they don't get as much love as maybe some other subgenres. So definitely that. And there is a discount, a sync discount.
Which I just put in the chat. So if you go to McFarland, which is the publisher, if you use SIC 2024, you get 20% off. I'm not going to lie to you. The book is not cheap. So sorry about that. We had nothing to do with that part, but we did get a 20% discount. And I think most of the authors are sync members. So it's lots of folks are in there. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. And then for myself, I have a book coming out. It's the second in my Magical Fortune Cookie series. And it's, so let me tell you the premise, and then I'll tell you the title. So the premise is, it's Felicity Jin, my main character. She is catering for a wedding. And so instead of the traditional wedding cake, they have a tiered cake made of egg tarts that she delivers. Unfortunately, a wedding is going downhill because there's a missing groomsman, and it gets worse when the groomsman is found under her cake table. So then Felicity has to really figure out what happened. And the title is called Star-Crossed Egg Tarts, and it comes out in January.
I love it. I love it. And that's a fun series. And that's a newer series for you, right? The first book came out this year. So that's exciting. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, anything from anyone? How's Sync Connect going for everybody? Let us know in the chat. Are you having a good time with your mentors or your mentees and talking to people? And I hope it's giving you what you're looking for. Again, this is another way of having accountability. So you get some thumbs up and stuff. So that's great.
Yeah, as a mentor, I could say I've been really enjoying the process. Just, digging in with someone who's working on their first book. It's really exciting and just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And as you know, it's like when I teach again, I learn from my students as I'm teaching. I think being a mentor is a great gift as well. Right. Well, I'm gonna sing out the praises of Jennifer J. Chow, because this is her brainchild. And Sync has I'm the solo paid staff person, and we rely on an incredible board and volunteers to do things like the write-ins and other things like that. And so the team that Jen put together to run the mentorship program is really fabulous. But she's been doing a lot of work in between visiting colleges with her daughter and writing a book. Yeah. It's always something, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here today on this. I live in New England. I live right outside of Boston, and it's 95 degrees. This is not normal for here. So, and I have to go walk to the store. So there's going to be that. But yeah, and Liz is nearby. And Jen, how's it in beautiful California?
It's good. Sorry, it's the same. It's warmer actually than usual, but not nearly triple digit.
There you go. Yeah. It's fun. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being members of Sisters in Crime. Liz, thanks so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for inviting me. This was super fun.
Yeah,
Super fun. Yeah.
Thanks to you both, and I'm glad to hear that everyone's having a great time in the mentoring program.
Yeah. No, I am too. It's great. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.